Hey everybody, it's Thursday.
And I can't believe it because it's the longest week ever. So, welcome to this week's edition of the Night Bite.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Emily. And thanks for being here with us this evening. So, usually we start out with a fishing report and
Yeah, I mean it's status quo around the Midwest where the fish are up, either starting or actively spawning. Walleyes are still up shallow. Uh, getting bass on spinner baits, so it's that springtime vibe right now.
it is. And I admit that I was a little bit distracted through your fishing report because I swear I locked my cat in the room and I just heard him fighting upstairs. So there's that. And I have no idea what you're talking about. But the thing that I get
What's new?
What is new? The thing that really gets me during spring is that it seems like almost everybody is able to go out and find the fish because quite frankly they are shallow and you can typically see them. Now, what this means though is for people who go out to their boat landings and they're not seeing fish, make sure that you are going to that warmest side of the lake, because that is where the fish are going to be congregating. The other thing is if you are going to go fishing and you are only fishing at your local boat launch, that seems like a really great idea because it's paved and it's easy to move around and like less chance of ticks and stuff. But you need to realize the number. Well, it's true. Ticks are bad this year. You need to realize though the number of boats that are going in and out. And so even though you get there and it might not be a boat in motion at that moment, check out the cars that are there. If it's a whole ton of them, the ramp is used a lot. If there's none, that might be a better indication. But overall, that warm water is the name of the game.
Yep, I don't know what else you can say about that. Just keep looking shallow, and something's gonna bite.
And ultimately, we did find fish. So I guess to complete our fishing report, how did we actually do? We didn't find a trend for colors for plastics. We did use plastics, all kinds of shapes, all kinds of colors, all kinds of sizes, all of it worked as long as it was a hook and the size that they could bite. The other thing that we were noticing, I guess, is don't be afraid to fish a little bit deeper out because although there are those fish that are always going and spawning, there's those early spawners that have already begun to push back out. So especially if you are not looking to fish the spawning fish because you're looking to leave them to create more fish for the future, look for fish that are already heading towards that summer pattern because crazy to say they are there.
Yep, absolutely.
Cool. So with that, I was going to say, give us your fishing reports. It looks like Tobin is checking in and doing a little bit of that. So we love hearing that. And we even talked about a little bit of walleye fishing this weekend ourselves. So interested in that as well. But if you guys have other fishing reports, let us know where you're at and how it's going or what you're fishing for this weekend, because we would love to hear about that. As we go through the show. Also put your comments or questions because we will talk about that as well. But with no further ado, let's bring in our guest. So Matt, welcome to the show.
Hey Matt.
Good evening. How are you?
Good.
Awesome. I feel like that's so formal. Good evening. when we see
Good
you, it's
evening.
when we see you, I feel like it's most often at like shows and expos, and you are one of the friendliest people there, and so that you caught me off so off guard.
Okay. Well, I didn't want to seem like a total spaz on here, so didn't want to be overly friendly. Tried to be cordial, but let's throw that out the window and have some fun.
There you go.
So I guess we're always told that our first question is the hardest because it is kind of generic, but because we know all about you, but in case there's people that don't, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, my name's Matt Ress. I live over in Monticello, Minnesota. I've been fishing for a long time, over 40 years. I love chasing bass, crappies, walleyes, and anything that swims. I'm a multi-species guy, so if you're telling me something's fun to go after, I'll try it. Even carp fishing can be a outstanding type on light tackle, and they're kind of an overlooked fish as well. But I represent Clam Ice Team during the winter time. I also represent Billy Rub, who makes baits and the famous Billy Rub that you can put on your baits. And, just doing some work with Blackfish and working with the team on there. And that's about it. Otherwise, just fishing. I started running some new rods here, which should be interesting with Joe Bricko, and that's the JT Outdoors rods. So that should be a little bit of fun too.
Yeah, you're gonna love those things because we honestly switched over a couple years ago, and they have been, especially from rod builders ourselves, they're very amazing. Like Joe has really dialed in those rods as far as being technique specific, right? That's his whole game, and he's pretty good at it. So we've really liked him so far. We got a few on our list for the open water and for ice. So yeah, that's awesome that you picked a couple up. I think you'll like them.
Which ones did you get? Now I'm interested.
Oh, I did forget to mention. I work with Ice Junkies and Ryan quite a bit, who you guys just had on a couple weeks ago, and I love him and love the team. Great community there too. So just a shout out to all of them.
Yeah, that's true. Well, and talk about a Facebook page that I love to hate or hate to love watching. Boy, is he always on Big Fish, and he started putting them on scales, and I can't even unless I'm there. No.
How's it like to be them planned today that canceled?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, that fish, it's like crazy.
That is.
But actually, talk about Big Fish. We've been watching your Facebook page, and to be honest, that's one of the things that prompted us to have you on. Is not necessarily that like Big Fish or what it has to be, but you have certainly been on the fish. So, for people who maybe haven't been following you, can you tell us a little bit about your recent adventures in the fish that you've been catching?
Okay, recent adventures. I'm over here in Minnesota now, so it's a little bit different than Wisconsin, that's for sure. We don't get the extra 2 lines. That can make things a little bit more complicated. Myself, I have not actually put my own boat in the water yet this year. My truck went down, so I have nothing to pull it with. I've been fishing crappies, as soon as the ice went off, I was out fishing crappies. Just like a lot of people, I was running from shore and looking for the warmest water and trying to get those crappies that are coming in, prepping for the spawn or just coming in chasing pin minnows, stuff like that. I've run over to my son in Wisconsin. He's over in Island Lake area, which is Weyerhaeuser Ladysmith, and I fished with him. And we've really done really well with crappies over there. I've jumped on with Jason Holm, and we've been fishing Minnetonka all over. It's been kind of a fun ride with him. He loves crappies too, and it's a good way just to get the lines wet and get out fishing before the season starts, because it's really late in Minnesota here. Mm-hmm. The bass season in Wisconsin is open, so I could shoot up to Chequamegon Bay from where I live and go after those giant smallmouth up there. So it's a little bit of a transition here, but I just use the time to go after crappies, and went out with Bill and his boat, and I've been pretty blessed. I try to surround myself with good people, and from there good things happen, I think.
Yeah, that's true.
It is.
Can you tell me about how you manage to stay mobile with a tackle bag or box? Because I always carry way too much with me for that to be possible.
Okay, yeah. I was trying to think of keynotes or key points to work on for this podcast. And, it's mainly crappie, but we talk other stuff too. Keep it simple is my thing. I run out there and I can be happy running with a pack of the Moon Eye jigs. If you don't have money, you can go out and buy a a bag of 32nd ounce jigs like this, and buy some plastics. Like this is a Billy Rub plastic here. This is the ball shat, which is really unique because you can take it's segmented, so you can take the segments off and downsize it. For like early in the season, it seems like the fish are eating a little bit smaller, meals. But basically, the bottom line is keep it simple. This is probably the most simple you can do. And these are Widowmaker jigs. They're a hair jig. These happen to be tungstens, but I could buy a pack of these, and I think they were only like, I think it was like $2.95 or $2 to $4. But all I did is throw these at first. My only cheat with that is I threw Billy Rub Alewife on it, which is a new scent that Billy came out with. And the thing is, I mean, it's just been phenomenal. But then all I have to do is have a rocket bobber. They're like $2.99 a pack, and you can cast a country mile from shore or from your boat. And, it's relatively cheap. Otherwise, you can just buy a cheap old spring bobber and put that on your line. You have a hair jig on. You don't even need the scent, but I just think it helps. And go after them, go searching.
Okay, so I love all the things that you're talking about. So I'm even going to break it down a little bit more. And the rocket bobber has always been one of my favorites. And to be honest, it's probably been a full year since I put one on the line. But like you're saying, is super, super castable. So that is awesome. And you learn to have accuracy with it, like pretty quickly. So as far as being user friendly, I would say it definitely is. But I also love the aspect that little bottom, you can turn it to be like a slip float or
slip bobber. Yep.
Steady. Yeah.
Yep. You can.
Oh yeah, even Ray is checking in. Gotta love rocket bobbers. And just like you're showing, it is just as easy as turning that little bottom piece. And then you have both of those options for bobbers. So that is great.
Yep.
Also lots
Especially
of fun colors that are available. Yeah, go ahead.
Especially from shore. These are important because they're weighted. Mm-hmm. And you can get extra casting distance. You can have any type of rod you really want. I mean, what I'd recommend is like a 7-foot-ish rod if I'm casting from shore and not in trees, so I could get good casting distance. I like to use a 1,000 to 2,000 reel because the spools are bigger and the line falls off those spools a lot better. You'll get further distance with them. And then you put a rocket bobber on there, and you can, like you say, it's good to be accurate, but you can get this thing launched out there a long, long ways. And, just keep searching for fish if you have to, just lengthen it. When you're in a boat, though, and you're getting at that 6-foot level and your rod's 7 foot and you're trying to cast, it can be a comedy of errors in the boat or, a little bit tougher to fish. You guys probably can appreciate that for sure.
That's so funny. The other thing that I love about the rocket bobber, and actually I almost forgot this, but if you are out bobber fishing and those littles are sometimes mixed in with the bigs, in the panfish series, the rocket bobbers, the tip of it is a hook remover. And so it's notched, so you can put that little hook in there and then stick it right in that fish mouth and pop it out. And that is honestly, it's fun. It's user friendly. It's great.
I was going to mention that tonight. Actually, just talking about a hook over, you can use the one on top of the bobbers for the panfish series ones. But then I also got the toothpick from Cold Snap Outdoors. Sorry about that. I'm trying to adjust to this camera. And
yeah, it's backwards.
This is a great device for taking your jigs out of the crappies without using a forceps or something, because it doesn't knock the paint off of them. And sometimes the paint color can be the difference between catching and not. I've also had it where I fished with a jig with everything knocked off it and it's outfished everything else. So I mean, everything has its time and its place, its season. But this is a good little thing. I think they're like $249, $349 or something like this. Has a little retractable deal. You can just hook it on your shirt, jacket, whatever. And I think you'll really find it beneficial for pan fishing.
Yeah, we have a
So-
couple of those in the boat too. Because the other thing that's nice. So during this time of year, especially when I'm running the floats. Oh yeah, the pink one.
That's mine.
Yeah. The pink one and this
when I'm
one's the
running
really
when
long
I'm
one.
running floats in the springtime, or when I'm vertical jigging, I honestly like to pinch my barbs down because you tend to get the crappies hooked in the roof of the mouth, like way
Right.
in there, and then you can't. There's no good way
Right.
to like leverage your jig, and so between pinching the barb and using the toothpick, then it comes out really easy. And I don't notice, with the vertical fishing like that, I don't notice losing a whole lot of fish. Because just, if you think about it, look at some of your tungsten jigs barbs versus the barbs on your summer tackle. They're basically non-existent on your winter tackle, and you catch plenty of fish. It just has to do with, laterally, if you're doing a lot of casting or trolling, barbs are a little bit more important. But in the grand scheme of things, I mean, especially if you're on a good bite, losing a couple fish at the side of the boat isn't really that big of a deal. Being able to take them off fast and get your bait back out there, I think that's a little bit more beneficial.
That's true. Plus the rods now you can afford a little bit better, more parabolic rod, even if it's long or short, as long as it's got a good bend in the middle. That'll help keep that fish pinned and won't let it shake out as much. You won't rip its out. On that note, I wanted to talk about hooks a little bit. Here's just that cheapo hook that I use sometimes, the jig. But a lot of times they come, really super tight. And with crappies, especially when you're getting into the 14 inches, 13 inches, or, the nice 12s and stuff. One thing that I found that's really helped me out is to take and bend that hook, just hook it underneath your fingernail, and then bend that hook up about an extra, 10 degrees or so. And if I can find the camera, you can see that hook is up over where the line is coming down. And I just think your hooking percentage is way higher. Does it stress the hook? Maybe a little bit, but I like the benefit of that and being able to hook the big ones than, not losing them. Because there's nothing worse than getting a big fish by the boat and losing it, just because you didn't bend a hook out just a little bit. So anyways, that's something that I do that I think will help. It's great with your ice fishing lures as well. I bend it out a little, extra 10 degrees. And then I wanted to talk about keeping how to do your jig presentation. And I found a jig. This is really hard to do here, but anyways,
You're actually doing a really good job.
Yeah.
It's the Macula tackle jig. And I don't know if you guys have seen it or heard it. I've been at a couple shows with them in the booths, but they have this unique eye on them up here. Okay. That's elongated. And what you can do with it is you can tie it up and have it totally horizontal like this, or you can slip the line down. You can slip the line down and run it vertical like this, or kind of like how a lot of the new jigs are. You can run them at that 45. But I find if you can use a jig, something like this Macula, which is very versatile, if you keep them horizontal, that presentation is a lot more deadly on crappies than a guy would think, or a gal. excuse me. But I think that's really important in your presentation, sometimes keeping that bait perfectly horizontal. So I've even went and used these macula tackle jigs as well. And then I do that bend out. I just take and bend a hook just a little bit and extra just a little bit so that I hook into the roof of the bigger crappie's mouths. So there.
Honestly, I think that is a phenomenal tip.
Yeah.
I know that there is a time or two that I have, like especially river fishing, like snagged into a log or whatever. And if you have a hook that bends just enough that you can pop out of that without losing the jig, and I know I've left that jig a little bent a time or two, and I've wondered, is this hurting my fishing situation? And it never seems to have hurt, but I guess I never considered that it could be an advantage, that if it is tipped out that little bit that you could increase that hookup percentage. And something about that just makes sense to me. So I'm definitely going to have to try that. But other things that you talked about that I'm going to have to try is those shimmer jigs from Widowmaker. So I hate to go backwards, but I'm really interested. Are you tipping that with plastic or using that as is?
Okay. Like I said at the beginning, when I'm running around and jumping in everybody else's boat or fishing from shore, what I like to do is I like to keep it simple. You know, you've got your rocket popper, you've got some kind of jig, whatever your jig preference is. And then I like to use plastics. And the reason I like to use plastics is because I don't have to tote around a minnow bucket. I don't have to tote around waxies. I don't, on and on and on. There's a time and a place for everything. But when you're using plastics, okay, I mean the action is phenomenal, and I really don't care what brand you use. I mean, buy Billy Rub. It help me, support my fishing habit. But I think that you catch bigger fish on them. Myself, I believe you do, unless the only time that I would say that there's a little bit of an exception, I think, would be at night soaking minnows. I really think that soft plastics, and I know Josh is a hoarder of plastics, especially for ice fishing. And I think you could probably attest to that too, that a lot of your bigger fish are going to come on your plastics. And then you don't have to mess around with live bait. With that being said, I do like to use this product from Billy Rub. And it's a paste that you rub on to your it's a paste that you rub onto your plastic, and it mimics food. This one is alewife scent. We have smelt. I actually work with Bill a little bit now and then when he gets super busy, so I have a little bit of a vested interest in it. But I've been a scent guy back in the 80s when I was really power bassing. I always went out and bought Bang anise spray, and I always used that. I would always spray my lure on it. But the one thing I did notice while using that product is that as soon as it touched the water, there would be an oil slick. So you can prep your bag and you can put a little material in there and hope the plastic absorbs some of it. But this type of product can help alleviate that situation. And then, when you're out fishing minnows, when you're getting 5-1 on minnows, I mean, why wouldn't you change over? And there's a lot of good bait makers out right now. I've used Billy Rub's plastics for almost all my winter fishing, and I've done. And his plastics are protein infused too. I guess I should have mentioned that before. The plastics here, we actually put a protein in here. So these come, you open the bag and you're like, wow, that smells. I mean, it's not a horrid smell, but it smells fishy. And you're already starting out ahead of the game because you have protein in your plastic. Okay. And then you add something like this. I mean, it's a lot easier than carrying a bait bucket or night crawlers in your pocket. So I've found a benefit and value to it that's just helped put more fish in the boat. And like I say, I just keep it simple. I got a few jigs in my pocket and some plastics, and I'm good to go.
To be honest, I feel very similar to that. So I appreciate hearing that. I mean, there's so many people out there that are shocked, like, even still to this day, wow, you use just a jig and a plastic. And it sounds, it's what I do all the time. It's so easy for me, or for you. But like for some people, that's really crazy to be just using that. And I guess I'm really interested in that Billy Rub, the scent, because I've also been out fishing where I guess I'll say this first. Like, I'm the kind of person that insists, like, that's not going to make a difference. Like, especially, if you're moving through the water, if you're jigging one spot, maybe that scent piles up in that spot. Who knows? I don't know how that works, but
Right.
I have been in situations where I've seen scent work. And so I have seen actually the Billy Rub stick to baits. How do you not love that?
It's hard not to. And I know it would be hard to be a convert, but there's a couple of cents that I mean, for myself, that I would go out and buy and try for $6.99 or $5.99, whatever it is at the stores. And that would be the Emerald Shiner. That's my absolute number one. But with all good things, you gotta be careful, because if everybody's doing it, the fish get smart. So but anyways, Bill came out with the new alewife. And as soon as we made it, we rocketed up. Well, I shouldn't say rocket when it's 7-hour trip one way, but we went up to Lake of the Woods right away, and we put this on. And I mean, we were catching walleyes and 1 pound perch, and it was amazing. I was like, and the guy who was over here he wasn't catching. If you did not have the alewife on, you just weren't catching. And then we had it on, and I showed a lot of great pictures from Lake of the Woods. I didn't get any giants up there, but it was a good trip. And the alewife has seen me through this crappie season. I always use it. When I was fishing, like I was talking about, like feather jigs or chicken jigs or whatever, a lot of times, and you'll hear Matt Johnson talk about it too in his breakdowns, is these jigs, you're fishing and you're trying to mimic like a pin minnow, okay? And what I do in this situation is I'll take my Billy Rub and I'll put it on the tail, and I'll actually twist it around the tail, and it'll thin that tail down. And I was getting more bites than with the tail exposed like this and kind of more fluid. When it was straight and tight like that, I got more bites. I got more fish.
That is so interesting to me, because I feel like the last time I heard that was maybe the Wolf River. And I believe that they were in reference to the flies, and they were saying, cut some of the hairs off of that because it's just too much for the fish. And sometimes that more sparse hair, when I heard about it, they didn't know if it was like the action becomes different, or if it like was the way it mimicked the minnow, or who knows. But I'm really interested hearing you say that, instead of actually cutting the hairs off, that you can use that Billy Rub to, narrow that down to that slimmer profile, because that makes that feather or that hair like really super adjustable, I guess, as far as fishing with it.
Same thing with the silkies. You guys know what the silkies are from clam. You can put it on the silkies and tame them down as well. That's actually a cheat code from Dave himself. So I probably shouldn't say that, but I'm letting you know that it can serve multiple uses and fit different applications.
And then when we are talking about that Billy Rub, like when you open that, what's the shelf life on it? Is it gonna like, it sits on your boat in the sun, it's gonna go bad pretty fast, like use it, or it's gonna last?
One day, that's it. You got to use it all, and then that's it. All right. No, I thought I'd jock everybody with a little fun there. The original one that was made has been sitting on the shelf, and it's on its 5th year. And you open it up, and it smells just like the batch we just created. So the shelf life is pretty much indefinite. There are a couple caveats. Will this work in extreme cold? Yes, it will work in extreme cold. It's just a petroleum base, so you don't have to worry about that. And then there's preservatives in there that keep the meat from spoiling. But if it's in like 90 degrees sun or sitting on the dash of your boat, sometimes it will liquefy. It will turn to more of a liquid. And all you do is just take something in your boat, stir it up, and you stick your bait in it. I suppose I should a little demonstration bait as to how you would put it on. You don't need a ton of it, but you can take and just put your plastic in it and rub it around. You can take your finger, just dip it in here and rub it. As you can see, this is ribbed. And this here is a power bait. And I actually use Billy Rub on power bait. I love power bait, but I think it needs a little kick. Anyways, and you just take and you rub it on. And just as long as it's all coated, you're good to go. People wonder how often do you have to change it out or whatever. If you look at your lure or you're going through a lot of weeds or going through a lot of fish, I would reapply often, as many as each fish. And it just takes a little bit on your fingers, smear it on there, and there you go, you're fishing again. So these bottles, or I guess it's a little cup, these cups will actually last you a long time. And I'm not really on here just to promote Billy Rub, because I do want to talk all things crappie and seasonal movements and what's next for our progression in crappies. But when I'm taking and snapping a Tikka minnow, and that'll probably be in another couple of weeks. We'll be doing that probably off the edge of the weeds. This is another clam product. I'm sorry I showed you that, but I'm trying not to go overboard with just one person, with just one company. But here's a shiver minnow, and you look at how big this is compared to my hand, and it's pretty big. But people got to remember that these crappies are predators, and they're fighting however many other crappies are out there for the same food. So I'll be switching to more aggressive tactics like this pretty soon. Can you put Billy Rub on these too? Yes. Does it help? I believe it doesn't hurt. But usually it's just a snap. You just snap it up and let it fall to the bottom, and then you just keep doing it again. The other scenario is you're in your boat and you're scanning and you're like, oh, you guys know that feeling. You're like, yep, there they are, so you get all excited and you can sit there and vertical fish with them. And I can take my Jason Mitchell dead meat stick, throw it down, and sit and ice fish off the side of my boat by just ripping a Tikka minnow up and down, or a plastic and jig or whatever. But there's so many different ways to catch these crappies, and I think you could keep it simple with plastics and a jig and do it that way, or you can try some new tactics and techniques like jigging any of these type of minnows, and they do a great job. So, yeah. What's next?
Well, I think that you're really onto something when you're talking about that upsizing a little bit, because you are so right that they're all fighting for forage, and so those bigger crappies are going to be that predator looking for that bigger minnow. And I always love, but also secretly hate, like that point usually in the summer, and the bass fishermen will start catching crappies, and they're catching sometimes really good ones,
Oh,
good
yeah.
ones. And we're just
For
like,
sure.
oh, look at this junk. They throw it over the boat. They don't even stop for a picture. And it's like, no, that's like a prize fish. And so, I mean, that's something that I always try to remind myself is, because I do love plastics also, but there is this size that must be around 2 inches that I'm like, this is the bait, because that's what I buy all the time. And so although I have profiles and colors and all the things, like what you're saying, sometimes throwing on that larger bait is going to make a huge difference. So great reminder.
Right.
Well, and another thing to that too is that we get, as pan fishermen, we get stuck with this mindset of small light tackle, and I think what happens is that we're so successful with it, but the thing is that what a lot of people forget, it's almost more about the fall rate than the size of the tackle. Because if you went, and we've experienced this, because I have the pleasure of having a partner all the time in the boat, so we can fish opposite sides of the spectrum and meet somewhere in the middle to find what's working twice as fast.
Right.
I'm usually one to throw some of the bigger stuff, and just because you're using 32nd ounce jigs doesn't mean you can't use a 3.5 inch paddle tail and pitch it out there. Or we straight line troll for crappies a lot, and that 32nd ounce or that 16th or that 8th will keep it in the water column. But I'm still using a big presentation. Just because you're using a big presentation doesn't mean it has to be heavy. You
Right.
can make those presentations light up in the water column. Crappies like to feed up, and a lot of times what makes them so hard, especially, in midsummer, is that they're suspended, they're roaming around weed lines, and they don't mark very well on your electronics, unless you're
Absolutely.
using live scopes. So that's what makes them hard. But if you fish the top half of the water column, somewhere in that lake, eventually you'll run into it. And then you just adjust your size. And you can sometimes, you want to catch a bunch of fish, go a little bit smaller. If you want to weed through some of the fish, just put a bigger bait on until you stop catching the smaller ones. And then you aren't catching as many, but every one that you catch is probably going to be a better, decent size. Or that pot of fish just doesn't have any big fish in it. And it's time. Every lake has multiple schools of crappie and multiple schools of pretty much everything. You just have to find the right one.
Right. And the bigger ones have a propensity to roam more anyways. But you're right. They'll kind of hang around like walleyes in your classes. So there is that. And then also the profile, it's kind of a match the hatch thing too. As the little, fish grow bigger throughout the seasons, you can get away with going with bigger presentations too. But yeah, I like what you were saying there. Definitely 2 people in the boat trying 2 different things is a real benefit until you lock something on and start getting into the fish you're looking for. Another thing you mentioned was the forward-facing sonar. I am not a proponent of it. I just don't like what it could do to the fisheries, but it works wonderful. I mean, it absolutely is a game changer as far as fishing. And I got the pleasure of using it in a boat earlier this season, and we could kind of chase around schools of crappie, and we could have really beat up on them if we wanted to. So people got to be careful with that. Rachel? People got to be careful.
It's okay. It's live.
It's live. At least it isn't a baby crying, but I love babies. But anyways,
I feel like we all need to call for Rachel. Rachel?
We all need a Rachel. But that forward-facing sonar, I just wanted to say that we have to use it responsibly as fishermen. I don't care what species it is, but it is such a game changer. No, it does not make the fish bite, but can it put you on fish to give you plenty of time to maybe adjust to what they're looking for? Yes, it can. And with that, I did notice early in the season when we were fishing alone and using the forward facing sonar that we didn't have too many problems spooking the fish off. By the end of it, when other people got their boats out, we were playing bumper bobbers with our bobbers on a school of fish. And you had 3 units pinging off these fish. So Jason and I went in this back bay. We were just kind of like, hey, let's just go take a breather and let these fish rest. This is ridiculous. And we went back there, and he was using the sonar back there too. And I noticed that the fish were shying. They were starting to shy away. And I just started casting in areas where you think they would be, where there might be a little bit of weeds or old weeds or whatever. And I started casting away from the boat. And to my benefit, I started catching the bigger fish there. So they were already acclimated to that sonar. But then again, it really does need to be used responsibly. So I wanted to bring that up as well. But boy, it is pretty awesome to be able to find schools of crappie, especially under the ice. Oh my word. way less holes and stuff like that. I don't run it myself, but I've run with people who've had it, and it is kind of magical. It cuts the finding fish time down just incredibly.
Well, and you're bringing up actually a really interesting point again, because, all sonars to some extent have some kind of ping or, they shoot something out and read it back. That's how your graph is created, and so some people will be like, those fish, they can't tell that, they can't feel it, they don't know. And that's fine, and then there's people out there, I've seen that it affects them, and so there's both schools of thought. And I guess I don't really have a place to point to that has, the specific answer, but I have noticed that especially when you're fishing shallow water, other types of graphs can affect those fish as well. And so especially if you are in a place where, if you are able to, cast around, or you just know that the fish are in that area, if you're able to actually, I know it sounds crazy, turn your graph off or just the sonar, leave your map on, leave your waypoints on or whatever. But if you don't have that sonar down making that noise, sometimes it really does affect kind of that whole ecosystem. And how, because I'm going to say sometimes the fish come around, but I feel like even like more turtles sometimes come around. But is that because I'm sitting there quietly, or is that because I turn my graph off? Again, I don't have that answer, but I've noticed that personally.
Well, to that point, Emily, like we'll even go to the length of pulling the trolling motor out of the water. And we use shallow water anchors a lot with our boat. And so when we're in less than 4 feet of water, I might push pull us around like they do on the flats. And you'd be really amazed at how you'll catch some fish, you anchor, you turn your sonars off. You don't have to pull the trolling motor up. I always do. It's just easier. And you sit there for a little bit, and because you stopped catching fish, you turn all your stuff off, and then a couple minutes later, you catch fish. But then you catch fish for a longer period of time with all that stuff off. And because you're just another, floating thing there in the backwaters. And, with the forward-facing sonar, I do think that there's been a lot of anecdotal evidence that shows that fish are, starting to get spooked by it. They can feel it, and it's a lateral line thing. But for me, I really like, I like catching fish. Don't get me wrong, but I'm one of those people that really like fishing for the sake of fishing. Not saying I don't want to go out there and not catch anything. I don't want to go out there and waste my time, but I do really feel like it's more enjoyable when you can put all the, you don't have a complete puzzle out of the box, and then all you need to do is glue it together and throw it on the wall. I like putting the puzzle together, getting all the pieces to fit, and there's just something about being able to do that yourself and keeping those skills sharp that help you when when you're in a situation where your truck's broke down and you can't pull your boat around, so you have to go back to shore fishing, or maybe you don't even have a boat in the first place. You're a kid right out of high school and you don't have any electronics. Those kind of skills are like gold. I don't care how much a forward-facing sonar costs. Nobody can buy the skills that the three of us have built up in our lifetimes. And the three of us can outfish a forward-facing sonar.
That was motivating. We're skipping work tomorrow. We're all going fishing.
All right,
wow.
Saddle up.
It is
No,
true,
I get your point, and I think that's really valid. But here's the other part that I can appreciate about it is we're so time crunched now. I mean, why do you think like Instagram was running like short reels or YouTube short reels? Because people just like their attention span was this short, this whatever. But with time, one thing that the forward-facing sonar does do is cut down your time in finding fish. Mm-hmm. Granted, you have to learn it and all that stuff, but after you get locked onto it, and I'm talking specifically for crappies, which are kind of a suspender fish, and it just helps. I understand it cutting down the time,
Yep.
and I appreciate it. And you'll hear people talk about it. They use it to find fish, but then, hey, we drop the Vexilar down or the Markham down, and that's how then we go after, then we catch it, and I get that. But with that comes great responsibility again, even if it is a time saver and you only get, a little bit of time after work, it's all well and good. And I don't hold animosity against anybody who uses them, but just got to use a little bit of caution with it.
You bring up a good point. I do appreciate a good bump in electronic sophistication, because that always means a little bit more tighter regs. I'm not, I don't want everybody to not go home with a bucket full of fish. I'm not saying that. There's some management that's needed, but the easier it gets to fish, the harder it's going to be to take fish home. That's where we live, because when people have the ability to fill up pickup beds, the more people that have the ability to fill up pickup beds full of fish, no matter what species, there has to be a way to, tame that down to an acceptable level where we all can use the resource. So, the good and the bad of it is maybe we'll just start seeing bigger fish, because a lot more of some of those that might have gotten taken home have to be let go just because can't have that many fish. But we'll see in the future here.
Right.
Look at Emily.
I just think, okay, the people who are following the rules are not necessarily the problem, and like maybe they are as technology changes. I mean, I guess I'm not trying to argue that I haven't thought that through, and the people who aren't following the rules, doesn't matter what the regulations say, because they're just not going to follow the rules anyway. So I'm not trying to get like in depth on it, but I'm personally passionate about this in spring because it is so easy to take fish home. You can see them, and people who aren't normally fishing are out doing things like that. And so, I mean, I hate to be all fired up, but we all talk about how, the fish that we for tomorrow make more fish for tomorrow. Corey, you missed the entire beginning where we like showed your jigs and this way, that way, the whole thing.
Corey, you totally missed it. We gave you like the best we gave you the bet. Immaculate Tackle is like flying off shelves now because Matt was sitting here talking about it. So, but you missed it.
Matt
So-
hired planes and wrote the
Yep.
company logo in the sky. It was pretty cool.
Everybody out there, give Corey a hard time. He's painting those immaculate jigs right now in the basement. You know, Corey was. We see Corey and Matt at shows, a lot, and Corey was nice enough to send us or get us a couple handfuls of unpainted immaculate jigs, and right before we moved. So I'm in the process of digging them out of one of the fishing boxes. Yeah, we have some somewhere. But yes, we're passionate about the sport.
You had a few things that you wanted to dig out this weekend, though. And so, you know, with the extra day of the weekend, it is a holiday coming up. And so that is going to be really great. We can dig that stuff out, but also a really great time to pack your patience if you are going to the boat launches, because, you know, we talked about a lot of people hitting the water, and boy, this is the unofficial start of summer where people do.
Yeah. Patience, not only for fishing, but for our fellow motorsport enthusiasts. You know, it's the patience is the name of the game this weekend. Instead of getting angry, you know, if you have to wait in a line anyway, just get out of your truck and see if you can offer some help. You know, speed the line up a little bit instead of sitting there and getting angry, because, you know, it's sometimes it's hard. You know, there's guys that go out and are pressured to buy a boat for the family, and all the kids are there, and you know, the spouse is sitting there, you know, whether it's a man or a lady yelling at the other one, like, you know, get the boat in, and then you've never done it before. I don't know how this works, and then there's a line of 10 people, but just be patient. It's just, you know, we'll all get on the water or get there early, right, Matt?
Exactly. Get there early and get the heck out of there. I think that's really important. You can go out and catch a lot of fish. That's another thing you got to pay attention to. This time of year, you've got fish on beds, especially crappie, and you'll see the crappie are black. They've got their tuxedos on and stuff like this. You also have to remember to watch the resource as far as not abusing it that way. Catching all these fish off of beds. It's a great way to go after them, but it's, you know, in a way, it's kind of like shooting fish out of a barrel. You know, so make sure you take your amount for a meal or whatever, but just remember how long it takes to replace this resource. I think that's the biggest thing. Whether it be walleye, crappie, it doesn't matter. I mean, it takes a long time to replace. This isn't a grocery store that gets restocked all the time. And just because hypothetically every 2 years the DNR restocks the lake does not mean that you're going to see the benefits of that until a very long time, you know? So just be careful with that. Have fun. You know, it's great to have a cookout, but you can actually have sides besides just a big plate of fish, you know? I mean, because sometimes I think as Americans, we have a propensity to gorge, where you could get by with, you know, 2 to 4 fillets of a crappie or walleye or whatever. So I think there comes responsibility with this. I've kind of jumped off the crappie fishing thing because they're on the beds now. That's something I choose to do, and nobody else has to do that. But I think with wisdom and whatever comes a little discipline. And after all these years fishing and whatnot, you can see certain lakes that are hurt. They've got stunted little baby fish in them, or, you know, goofy things like that'll happen. So just remember that the resource is all of ours collectively. But if everybody takes, you know, it's hard for it to replenish. And of course, I get to see that in Minnesota here now because there's a bigger population. You know, there
Mhm.
wasn't people in the middle of the Chequamegon National Forest in some of the lakes I was fishing up there. You know,
Yep.
so you know, it just comes with great responsibility. But I hope everybody has a great Memorial weekend. Got to remember what the holiday is for, obviously, and it's so fun to be on here. I appreciate you guys, and I appreciate all the work you guys do for crappies and you know, the Crappie Junction and all the all the stuff you guys put out there for education and to help people learn how to fish. And
Well, and thank you as well,
Yeah.
because I mean, what we do, what
We have
you
an easy
do,
job.
yeah. I mean, so I mean, everybody does things a little bit different, and I think that in a lot of ways we share similar messages, and I mean that's what it's about is sharing that fishing community, but also in responsible ways. So,
Mhm.
to be honest, I'm inspired by your shore fishing. I'm inspired by the fish that you caught this year, and I've loved being able to talk to you this last hour. So thanks for being here.
thanks again. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And to the people at home, thank you guys for being here as well, because you guys always crack me up and say something funny when I least expect it. And as always, we're looking forward to seeing you guys on the next week's edition of The Night Bite.